Thank you, Patty. It always makes it so much easier when you have someone like Patty doing an opening song like that to get into the meat of the talk. Just kind of flows. Thank you very much. The talk today, well, let's talk about the theme. And the theme for September, October is living inside the box. Holy, we're always talking about outside the box, to think outside. Well, before we can do a lot of thinking and action outside, we got to learn to live inside the box. How do we work inside and then take that out here? So that's the theme. And the topic Reverend Nadine gave me to talk about was called Put Your Right Foot In. Well, that can open up to a whole lot of different possibilities. And the first thing when I heard that, you know, you put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, you put your right foot in and you shake it all about. Do the hokey pokey, turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. And of course you work up to putting your whole self in, right? So when I heard that, the first thing I thought about was that song. And the next thing I thought about was going up to the water. And you're thinking about going in the water. So we got the people that go up and they stick their toes in, ooh, oh, and they put their toes in, and then maybe they'll go up to their ankles, or later in the day they're maybe up to their knees, but they just don't get anywhere with that. And you know, then there's the other people, they go and they just dive right in head first. Now, you see, there's a problem with both of those. Because in the one, we really never get going and we never really get started. And then the other one, there's nothing wrong with jumping in head first, but you best be checking it out before you do that. Because that's dangerous too. Okay? So we got those two extremes, and what we want to do is we want to get back to, okay, how are we going to go about doing this? How are we going to go about advancing ourselves? What's the internal mechanism that we need to do in order to take on some of these things that we want to experience in life, or release some of the things that we want to release? And there is a process. And one of the first things that we got to do inside of ourselves is we got to cultivate our faith. Faith is the foundation of anything that we're going to do out there that is bold, new, and exciting. If we have the faith and we build our experience on faith, then we know that the spiritual guide is going to be there to present to us what it is that we need to do and when we need to do it. Now, that's the first step. The second step is, what about just sticking your toe in the water or jumping right in? So there's two aspects of our being that we have to make sure are in harmony before we make those steps. One's the head, the other's the heart. How many people have got a great idea and jumped right into it? They were very passionate about it, but they didn't think a whole lot about it, but it just seemed like a good idea, and when you did, it went... Anybody ever had that? Yeah. Oh my God, if I'd only thought about it a bit, I'd have probably done it different. Famous last words. And then there's the other aspect where we just got the head. We work through it logically, we analyze it, we work with it, and it seems to be the right thing to do, and we move forward, but there's no passion with it. It's just a head thing. Anybody ever done that before? And we just never get anything done. So in order to be able to advance ourselves outside the box for whatever endeavor it is that we choose to experience, whether it's release or bringing something to us or whatever the case may be, we got to have those three working together. We've got to have faith, and then the head and the heart got to work together before we do it. Now, is this a new concept and a new understanding and a new idea? Absolutely not. It's been around for thousands of years. And so I'm going to take you back to where this idea comes from, that I got it from anyhow. and let you know that when you do this, it's not going to always be smooth, okay? It's always rough when you're going into new experiences. But you got to have all of those three things, and they're critical. And the one that taught that the greatest was a great teacher, Jesus. And what he did, and he told us in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, and he said, "Unto thee thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Okay, well, that's nice. So what does it mean? We have to know that in Scripture everything is symbolic. And you could see in that Jesus was saying, "Upon this I will build my church." Well, he didn't build any churches. There's no evidence that he built churches. So he wasn't talking about a physical building. He was talking about our being. And Peter, each one of the disciples represent a faculty that we develop inside of ourselves to be whole and to be the best we can be in our life. And Peter, translated from Greek, is down through the translation, is rock or solid. And Peter represents the faculty of faith. So he was the first called, and Jesus said, "Upon this rock I will build my church. Upon faith I will build myself." So we need that faith to build ourselves. Now, when he went off to do his work, if in Scripture, if you go through it many times, when he went off to pray to the mountain, or, you know, when the going got rough, what he did was he stepped back in consciousness and he'd go to the mountain, which is a high place of spiritual exaltation. And he'd go into meditation or prayer. But he always, in the tough times, he always took 3 of his disciples with him. He took Peter, James, and John. Now, James and John are known as the sons of Zebedee. They were the 2 brothers. And one sat on the left and the other on the right of Jesus. And James and John, the 2 sons of Zebedee, represent James as the heart and John is the head. So it's the head and the heart coming together. So when Jesus stepped back to do some of the reflection and meditation that he needed to do, when he was really in some tight spots, he took those 3 disciples with him. Faith, the head, and the heart, all working together. That's where your power lies, right there. And all 3 of them have to be taken into consideration in any endeavor we do. Faith is the foundation, and we get the head and heart working together. Now, if we do that, our chances of succeeding are enhanced greatly. And then, if we're doing that, then the issues that come upon us when we step forward will be easier to deal with, if those 3 are working. Yeah, but even though I do that, it still all seems to go, but it never happened to Jesus. Wrong. When he was undergoing his great trial, the day before the trial, he took his 3 disciples, James, John, and Peter, to Gethsemane to do some praying and meditating. And you could read this in Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 to 45. And so he took them out there, and he was doing his thing, and he turned around, and his disciples were falling asleep. Oh, he wakes them up. Well, how can you do this? And then he went and prayed again and looked around, and his disciples are falling asleep again. And then he brought them around, and then a 3rd time. Of course, 3 is a kind of a completion, right? So, does that mean they weren't interested because the boss was going to get strung up in a kangaroo court the next day? No, no, no. This is a very symbolic type of thing for you and I. When we are advancing ourselves, and we're clear on where we're going and what we're doing, and we built our foundation on faith, and we got our head and heart working together, and we step out there and whap! We got this thing to deal with, where that may be. And then the doubt starts to creep in, and it erodes the faith. And then the head and the heart start arguing. Well, it feels like a good idea. Bet you you're not being logical and reasonable. Be logical and reasonable. Yeah, but if I am, I won't have any fun because there's no passion in it. Blah, 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 blah. Everybody have that happen to them? And you see, that's because your faculties are going to sleep. Just like it did to Jesus. So, you know, the key thing here is don't beat yourself up when that stuff happens, because it's going to. I mean, if it happened to him, and he was supposed to be a highly evolved spiritual being, then why do we think it isn't going to happen to us? Okay? Because we work the same in the human experience. So it was clearly written there and demonstrated there for us to understand that no matter how highly evolved spiritually you are, there is always a challenge breaking free of the old paradigm, stepping into the new. But you've got to have those three faculties working together. You've got to have that faith and keep coming back to it in the head and the heart. And no matter what the conditions are, no matter what they are, when we come back to that center, the Spirit will respond and provide us with the opportunity to move our way through it. Dr. Holmes said in the Science of Mind textbook on page 47, the mind must conceive before the creative energy can produce. We must supply the avenue through which it can work. It is ready and willing. It is its nature to bring into being through our thought and our action. So it's our thought and action how Spirit's going to bring it into being. And it's there waiting for us, ready to work for us. All we got to do is provide the avenue or the channel through which it can work. Well, I'm doing that, and it's not working. Well, you know, maybe there's an obstruction in there that we're not aware of. It's just like going out in the spring. You got the hose hooked up, and you go up and you turn the water on, and you can hear the water rush into the hose, and you get down to the other end, and there's a dribble there. Okay, well, there's just a dribble, so I'm going to spend the next 12 hours today letting that dribble work, because I need to get my garden watered. And I'm doing that. But the water's on, but I don't understand why it's there. Now, how many people would stand there all day with a dribble coming through? Probably a few. But generally speaking, we know that if we turn it on there and there's a dribble coming through, somewhere along the line there's an obstruction. So normally what we would do is we'd check the hose out. Oh, there it is. I'd take the kink out and whoosh. However, as people, when we're getting the dribble out of our work, we have a tendency to think, well, this isn't working, and we give up. We don't try. We can't figure out why. The head starts analyzing. Well, there's got to be a reason why this isn't working, blah, 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 blah. And then the heart goes, oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh, no. Okay? But do we stop to think, well, maybe there's an obstruction. Maybe we have something inside of us that's a negative belief that we've accepted about ourselves or about our journey that's causing an obstruction. Work at being open to and receptive. Don't say, what is that obstruction I need to know about? What is it that I need to know to advance myself? One of the key critical ways that the mind works three ways. There's a directive quality, setting goals, setting objectives, planning. There's a receptive quality, meditation, contemplation, prayer. We all do those. Okay? The contemplative and the directive. But the one part that we miss, which is the most powerful part of our mind, it's called the receptive quality, where we question out there and wait for the answer. Or we put it out there and wait for the answer. Now, we're not taught really well how to use this, but we all do, and we all get results. Let me prove it to you. Have you ever been thinking, you know, I haven't talked to so-and-so for a long time. I sure like to connect with them again. And 2 or 3 days later, the phone rings and it's that person. And they say, oh, I was just thinking of you. You just popped into my mind. Thought I'd give you a call. Anybody ever done that? Had that happen? when I got onto that, I thought, this is neat. And that was back in the days before I got all the facts with the long distance. So I thought, well, I'll just use it to save money. So whenever I wanted to talk to somebody, I just focused on it and had them call me long distance. And you know what? It worked. It's the receptive quality, the mind, that we want to use when we're looking and dealing with the obstructions. But James Redfield talked about it in his book, The Celestine Prophecy, too. One of the key things is asking a question. But the other part about it is asking the right question. Not, what's wrong with me? It's, what is it I need to know about myself to advance to the next step in this situation? So you've got to watch the question that you ask, and then you have to be patient. Because the world will bring you your answer. It'll bring it right back into the box. You initiate it in the box and put it out there, it'll bring it right back. And it will be delivered in the strangest of ways. Could be delivered in a dream, a coincidence. Maybe I got a reaction to something. It could be delivered in meeting somebody on the street and they say something, or somebody you know and they say the right thing. So there are many different ways that it could come. It come in the form of an unusual thought at an unusual time. Like my favorite is always remembering people's names. And as I get older, I'm finding that recall isn't quite as quick as it used to be. I don't know whether that happens to anybody else or not. However, my mind still works the same way. So all I say is, well, it's coming to me. And there I is. Sometimes 2 days later, you'll be having a shower, not thinking, boom, there's that person's name. Happens? That's that receptive quality. So when we start to learn about the right questions to ask and watching the answers, then you draw to you what it is that you need to know in order to advance yourself. Very, very powerful tool. And if you do that, all things are possible. Doesn't matter what the conditions are. I don't care what the conditions are or the circumstances are. If you believe and you go into action with your head and heart doing the right things and your intentions clear, doesn't matter what people say or what the world says around you, there is always that possibility of a yes answer from the universe. I remember one of the most trying experiences of my lifetime happened, this was in 1982? 82, yeah. And I started the process before that, but my partner at the time, her and I decided that we would like to add 2 boys to our family. We had 3 girls. And that we would be interested in adopting 2 boys. But we'd like them to be the same age as our daughters, with fair hair and blue eyes. Which I guess maybe for a lot of people that's a lot to ask for. So we went down and we started talking with social services, and they suggested that's a very difficult thing to do, and probably with my background and my credentials, it would never happen. So, but you would take some courses and foster parenting, so we did that, and we kept believing. By the way, I had a tacky background of 17 years of problems with the law and drugs and alcohol and everything, and I had just stepped out of that life when I come to the church in 1980, and I finished it off and cut it off in the fall of 1981. So I'd been working on this other thing while I was still trying to relieve myself of my past. And of course, anybody I mentioned it to says, you don't stand a chance. You have a criminal record, you've done all those things for 17 years. You don't stand a chance. Give it up. You're fooling yourself. But you know, we believed in possibilities, and we worked with that. And you know, the Spirit has the most incredible way of doing stuff. We used to watch the news every evening, and we watched Channel 4 or 5 with Daryl Jans when he was on, because he worked at SAIT, and I knew him from there too, and I liked Daryl. One night, and it was a Wednesday night, we watched Channel 27 News. That was back in the days when they had a program called Wednesday's Child. And on that program, they had special need kids that were up for adoption. And I had heard about the program, I'd never seen it, and I never watched it again after this one night. But, and here's the but, this one night, there were two boys on there that were brothers with fair hair and blue eyes that happened to be the exact same age as two of our daughters. So we applied. Now, I was given a 0 to about a 0.5% chance of getting them by everybody that knew me when I told them what I was doing. Most of it was 0. Okay? So we applied and we went through the process and we got down to the last 3 and we did the home study. Now okay, so I'm doing my work. I said, Spirit, God, I need to know how to present myself in this situation, because it just wasn't really good when you start looking at the facts and figure in the paperwork. So when the social worker come, we went down and she began the home interview, and I said, look, you know, before we go any further, I want to be real clear about something. And I want to be real clear, this is where I'm coming from, and I briefly put 17 years of not so great stuff into one lump sum. I said, this is where I'm at right now, and this is where we're going. So we had our plan about where we're going and things of that in those days. And I want you to know that up front, because when they do the checks, they're going to get, this was before I got the pardons and stuff like that done. I knew they would find that. So I was very clear up front. And she was very impressed with our philosophy and the approach and everything like that. Push comes to shove, we were selected. We were selected for these two boys. However, because it was such an unusual circumstance with such an unusual individual, hello, is that for me? Oh. Yep, it was such an unusual circumstance that they said, hey, what we got to do is we're going to hire another independent consultant in to give another home study. And they did. And in September, actually it was, I guess, end of September, 1st of October, 1982, the two boys moved in with us. And they were on there because my one son had had cancer for a year, Hodgkin's disease, and they come from a particularly bad situation where dad murdered mom, killed her, or stabbed her 39 times, that kind of a type of thing. So that's the background the boys had. And there they were, moving in, and we had the 5 kids, 4 of which were 17 months apart in age. And the 2 boys were 6 and 7, and we had the 2 girls 6 and 7. And interestingly, the one boy missed a full year of school, so we had 3 in grade 1. It was very interesting. But you know, if you listen to conditions that say no, or you listen to people that say no, then it's going to be no. That's the way it's going to work. However, if you believe in spiritual principle and you work with it and you're not attached to the outcome, big key. We weren't attached to getting the boys or any kids. We were doing what we needed to do in order to take us to a place where that possibility could exist. Not that we were going to get them, because everything said no. Everything. Logic, reason, everything said no. But Spirit said, there is a way. There is a possibility. And so we needed to step into the experience. Needed to work with it and to be open and receptive to possibility. Because we don't know if it's going to happen or not, but this is what we would like. And surely it did. That's what Yoda said in Star Wars. Do or do not. There is no try. For us it was either, okay, we're going to do this and follow it through, or forget it. Because trying at it isn't going to get you anywhere. You either do it or you don't do it. When you do it, you go into it. I got a really good quote this morning off of Facebook. Last thing I thought, going out, I'll check it. My brother put something up there and he says, you've only got 3 choices in life. Give up, give in, or give it all you got. And that give it all you got is what it's about. Doesn't matter what it is. And if you're not attached to an outcome, you may not get what it is you want. But however, you will get something far more valuable, far more precious, if you don't get what it is that you want. Because Spirit will never let you down. You'll get something that will bring you comfort and solace and advance you towards that experience of what I treat for and work with all the time is peace, prosperity, fulfillment, and happiness. Those are the 4 criteria that I try to work with, that I want to experience in my journey called life. Now, okay, ooh, wow, here we go again. So, one of the things that happens when we are looking at advancing ourselves and putting our foot in, and we do all this work, and we prepare the ground, and then the Spirit responds and starts giving us little things to do or opportunities. And the biggest question people have is, how do I know the time is right? And I get that all the time. How do I know? This is happening. How do I know it's right? It's real simple. If things are happening, then it's right. If things are happening, now is the time. Oh, great to say, but then there's that other part. But I'm not ready. Anybody ever done that? I'm not ready. Or I'm ready, but I would like to have this amount in the bank. Or I'd like to have that. Or I'd like to have this in place before I do it. Anybody ever do that? That's called conditional acceptance. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. When it's coming and starting, the time is right. Well, what if it's the wrong decision? It can't be wrong. Well, what happens if I fail? You can't fail. What happens if it don't work out the way I want to? That's because we're attached to an outcome. Ann and I were inspired about 6 years ago to go in this business. Rather than financing it by debt, or we financed it by equity. I solicited all the people I knew really well and got a bunch of investors. We put up 100 grand, went in the business, and it was just about 4 or 5 months before we opened up, before that stock market crash. Guess what happened to the business? Crash. So we had to spend time wrapping it all up. We were in business about 1.5 years and wrapping it all up and going through that whole procedure. People say, it's too bad you failed. We didn't fail. Well, it didn't work out. Yeah, well, so what? It just was an expensive personal development lesson. It's not about that. It's about what we garnered for experience. We learned so much about each other about that. We learned that we can work together. Long as I just do my job and don't try to do Anna's, it works out fine. Boy, when you're a control freak, letting that go is a challenge. But I let it go, and I'll tell you, she did her job really well. I did mine really well. Because her trying to do mine was the same thing. It was just wouldn't work. Okay? But working together, we did it. And we realized we could do that under extreme circumstances. And we learned so much. We got some great products. We met some new people. Got some good friends and acquaintances out of it. No, we didn't make any money. I lost a whole bunch. It's just a personal development lesson. I always say that, but I get caught speeding. Still happens. It's a personal development lesson. This is how much it cost me to learn to pay more attention. So whenever things go what people would consider to be wrong, I always look for the gift in this situation. What can I take from this that's benefiting me and that I can share? I'll tell you, you'd be surprised what a difference it makes in life when you do that. I've been married 3 times and divorced 3 times. And of course, being in this philosophy, it was like, how can that happen? Then I sat down one day and I decided I'm going to make a list to put those 3 women at the top. I'm going to put all the things there on it to see if I can get a correlation. Figure out what's the common factor here. Makes sense? Logically it made sense. Except after 2 hours there was only one thing in common. That was me. I was the only thing in all 3 lists. Well, that didn't make me very happy, so I made a commitment to myself to look at that, and over the next 3-4 years I worked on changing some of those things that I brought to those relationships that I didn't like about myself, because that's where it was. I changed those and I worked at it, and lo and behold, when you do that, the Spirit responds in the strangest ways. Walking on an elevator one day, and there she was on the elevator in the strangest of places. But that works, okay? That works. And I'm a much different person when I stepped into the experience with Anna than I was before. But that's the willingness to be able to examine self. What's in this box that needs to be changed so that I could take it into the outer world and experience the greatness there is outside the box. Because there's so much outside the box. However, if you don't know what's going on inside the box, then you can't get the good outside the box. The more you understand what's going on in here and work with it, the greater the experience out there can be. So we've had some great experiences, continue to have great experiences. However, the challenge is always the same whenever you go outside the box. Whenever you step out there, because you see the ego is familiar with the box, not the spirit. Spirit's familiar with everything. But it's the spirit that drives you outside the box. You look in this entire universe and there is nothing here that isn't growing and expanding and changing. That's the nature of spirit. So it wants outside the box. It's the ego, and it's not bad, it's just the way it works. It's comfortable with the box, whether the box is good, bad, or indifferent, or even ugly. It's used to it. So it likes to try and maintain that status quo. Even if something's going to be better. Even if we got a toxic bad habit. Anybody ever had any of those? Well, I don't want to go on all my hands to tell you how many I've had. Well, however, the ego's always told me that, hey, you know, do it later. This is good now. Even though it's not. That's why it's so hard to give up a bad habit. Because we've got to step outside the box. That's where Spirit's directing us. That's where we want to go. But the ego's holding us back. And so we have to understand that and realize that's just the ego's insecurity on dealing with the unknown. That's what my self-empowerment and transformation managing change is all about. It's all about that process and moving through it and knowing what's natural, because it's there all the time. We go on all kinds of marvelous adventures, Anna and I do, and every time I go on the new adventure, it's the same thing. I go on panicked. I freak out. But that's just the ego in me just getting into the experience. Oh, sometimes I even get dramatic about it. Nah, most of the time I get dramatic about it. Okay? But then I got to reel myself in. I know what it is and I step into it. People say, well, why do you do that to yourself? Because I like new adventure. Well, how come you don't deal with it better? Well, I don't know. That's just the way the ego works. And I have to work with myself. So it takes time. But I don't let it paralyze me, you see. That's where we go wrong a lot of times, is we let that paralyze us and keep us in there without stepping out. So in life, what we got to do is we got to put that right foot in and step forward. And I always say to people that one of my program on the Prosperity Plus, one of the great things I got in that was an experience I'd planned for about 1.5 years, and it was, oh, great. I was going to do this. It was a great experience. I signed up for a 21-day mountaineering adventure with Outward Bound about 10 years ago. I thought people that did that were absolutely nuts. But something moved me to do it. And I was all pumped and everything. But you know, as the time got closer to go, I started getting more tense and more uptight. And then I was getting in the car to drive. It was a 2-day drive out to Pemberton, and I'm driving, and You wouldn't believe all the things I conceived that I could do that were more important than getting there to do that on that road. You ever have that happen? Yeah, so talking about something is a whole lot easier than doing it. In fact, I always tell people you don't get into the do-do until you do the doing. When you start doing the doing, then you get into the do-do. That's where you step into it and a lot of stuff comes. But if you don't do anything, you don't have that. So that's part of going outside the box. When you step outside that box and you go into action, it's different than talk. Talk is easy. Oh, I could talk about all kinds of things. It's easy. But doing it is a different story. And that's the transition that we got to make when we put our right foot in and get outside that box. There, okay. So, one other thing here that's really important, and I'll close with this, is in order to advance ourselves, it's like moving from one residence to another. Everybody's gone through a residence move. Has anybody moved from a residence a while back and still haven't, like several years, and still haven't gone through all the boxes yet? Okay, so we just drag that stuff along. And actually I got 2 moves and I still got stuff from the other one I haven't gone through yet. Okay, and it's just like life. We go through life and we drag along all this stuff that really we don't need for our new experience, but we have a tendency to drag it along. And that's what taking care of incompletes are. Taking care of incompletes are making sure that we don't have any loose ends. And one of the most profound and deepest loose ends that we have, and I hear this all the time, is when people pass. And the other people that are here say, you know, I wish I would have said this. Anybody ever said that? I wish I would have. And one of the things that I'm really clear on about taking care of incompletes, especially with people, is, and this is one thing you could take with you today, and make sure you do this. You could sit down and reflect about all the people you care about in your life that you really like and really love, and think to yourself, if they were to pass today, is there something I would have liked to have said to them before that happened? Then I could be complete. Make a list and then phone them and say what you need. And always try to keep your precious relationships current so there are no incompletes. Take care of those old resentments, animosities, and those old false ideas that we may have got as a child that don't serve us. Because those are obstructions to the operation of truth through us. Those are the ones that put the kinks in the hose and prevent the flow. Be willing just to work at releasing that. Especially resentments. Huh? A lot of times they teach you that you have to love someone and let them go, no matter what they did. Not true. You have to like someone then and let them go. Not true. You don't have to like them and you don't have to love them. What you need to do is release the negative attachment that you got to the circumstance or situation or person. That's what's causing the problem. And maintain neutrality. You've got lots of people in your life that you interact with that you're just neutral. You don't dislike them, you don't like them, they're just there, and you're respectful and you deal with it, right? That's what you got to do with all those other people. And then the last aspect of that, when Peter said to Jesus, my brother has sinned against me, shall I forgive him 7 times? And Jesus said, no, forgive him 70 times 7. So he indicated that forgiveness was a very important process that we need to be consciously and actively working with on an ongoing basis. And so the biggest challenge here, the biggest place to work, is not with other people or other things, it's to forgive self. Because how many times have you been stupid the last week, or been an idiot, or a loser, or not important? I'm not going to ask for a count. But I can tell you it's probably been there, right? And we got to forgive ourselves because that's not the truth. We aren't all of those things. Those are false ideas that we've accepted or we keep affirming. They're not our reality. And so we have to forgive ourselves and give up those old. That means to give up. It means to stop doing as much as we can that self-debilitating and putting ourselves down. We can get enough people out there to do that for us. We don't need to do it ourselves. And when we do that and forgive ourselves, then we're opening the channel. And then we become free and clear, and the Spirit can flow through us and bring to us a multitude of great and different experiences. Because that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Put your right foot in and know that that's what it's all about. And so it is. Thank you.